Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight for a town meeting. We're scheduled for an hour, and we have a brief overview for you regarding our planning about coming back to school this fall. Um, I've never used the word unprecedented so much as I have since the last few months. We're dealing with a worldwide issue, as you know. And this is going to be a reference point in history where people refer to as pre-COVID and post-COVID. Everyone is feeling the effects. Everyone across Uxbridge, everyone across the Commonwealth, across the country, and across the world. It is really shaken some of our foundations and some of the things that we take for granted in terms of routines and what we describe as normal. I know for me personally, I have actually been on a school schedule since the age of 4. And not having those patterns in my life and those predictable routines that I can count on has really skewed my equilibrium a little bit. And I know that has impacted folks in a variety of different ways, not only seen, but also unseen. Since March 13th, even though we were prepping for a few weeks beforehand, we had no idea what was ahead of us in terms of this pandemic and its relationship to our community and to our schools. It's 4 months later. We know a little bit more, or a lot bit more, about what we're doing and where we're going, but that is still unpredictable. We're working really hard at it. And the purpose, again, for us today is to give you an update, a very brief update in terms of where we are and what you can anticipate for your child, for your family, and for our schools this fall. On our agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about our focus for our planning, our charge, our process, our planning, briefly about our grants, and about our communication, what you can expect from us going forward. Some of you parents who are in this audience and staff as well are on our building level working group, so you may have more details in terms of what we're talking about this evening. Again, brief overview, you may actually walk out with more questions than you had answers, but at least we'll be able to frame it for you. I applaud everyone in our community who have working with their own families, their own needs, their own health issues, but truly pulling together to meet the needs of our kids and our families here in Uxbridge. Everybody's been amazing. So before we start, some very brief thank yous that I would like to share with you. First, I'd like to thank our administrative team. This picture of our 3 principals here, planning for our exit in March, as well as the closing of our schools and then the opening. Planning for the opening of our schools has really been a 24/7 job. We've met together on Sundays at 11 o'clock at night, at 6 in the morning. They really are the heart and soul of this whole process going forward for us. It's often been an isolating and a lonely and stressful time, and we appreciate everything that they do. We do have, though we didn't meet in person for a few months, we did have the opportunity to meet basically every day. And every once in a while, we were able to share a laugh, and I was able to capture this as the many pictures I've taken through this COVID experience. This is actually my favorite. I have a huge thank you for all of our staff. As you can see in the picture on the left, this is from our Taft Parade on April 1st, where our staff missed their families and missed their kids and wanted to go out and see them. I appreciate the members of our school committee who were not only at that parade, but who have been by our side throughout this process, through the closure, providing guidance for us. This has not been easy for them, and we appreciate all that you do. The picture on the right is demonstrating our staff. When we put together our closure procedures and students came to pick up their materials, our staff missed them. So at all 3 schools, they were there to greet them and provide some sort of closure to the end of the school year. I cannot say enough about our technology department. That is Mr. Missler. You probably recognize him, even though he is wearing a mask on the left-hand side, and part of his team on the right. What they did as we abruptly closed, and being able to dismantle our Chromebook carts, be able to put in protections for our Chromebooks, and to disseminate them to our families, as well as working closely with our families to help them with Wi-Fi issues and their own technical issues, is absolutely outstanding. Working with our town officials, our police, our fire, our town manager for our weekly interdepartmental meetings, our Board of Health have been absolutely supportive of everything that we're doing here for your kids, and want to say a huge thank you to them. They've been outstanding. Our food service department, Herculean effort, provided thousands of meals to our students and families in need through the time of the closure back in the spring. While folks were hunkered down in their homes, they were here putting together meals that were needed for our families. Last but not least, would like to thank you, our parents. This little cartoon, as you transition from being parents of students who go to school, you go to work, your entire lives were upended, and you have adapted, you've survived, and you've thrived, and cannot do it without you. And this truly is a partnership. As we said all the time, that nothing is done in a vacuum. And even though our planning going forward already has thousands of hours in it, to pull this together, it still may not be perfect, but knowing that as we move forward through the year, we'll still be working together. To our planning, I know that there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of news across the country, across the world, across the state. And our focus here, along with other school districts, our focus, end of story, is the social, emotional, mental, and physical health, safety, and wellness of our students and our staff and our families. We want nothing more than to be able to provide an educational experience for your children from our staff, in which people not only feel comfortable, but they are safe to the best of our ability. Along those parameters, we're also need to focus our planning on academic achievement, on addressing the learning gaps, and some of those have been widened through this closure, as well as continuing to move our district forward through our strategic plan. We have spent months identifying areas in which we need to work and to strengthen the infrastructure of our district so that we can continue to support our students, our staff, and our families, regardless of the model that we happen to be operating in, is vital to us going forward. As you well know, we are governed by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here in Massachusetts. And the Commissioner of Education, Commissioner Riley, we're in contact with continuously. We have our charge. As we go forward into the fall, we are charged with having a plan for reopening that has 3 models to it. The 3 models are in person, where students come to school and they're taught by their teachers in front of them. Remotely, which is what we had gone to last year, where all of the instruction would be held via technology or through other means at home. In the third model is a hybrid model, where you have a combination of in-person as well as remote learning. We have to have our preliminary reopening plan to the department by next Friday, July 31st. Along with those models, we need to have specific plans in place for meeting the needs of our high need students. And also too, we need to share with them which model are we leaning toward. By August 10th, we need to have our comprehensive plan to the commissioner. He then needs to approve our plan. Before that happens, we will have it finalized. We'll ask the school committee to approve it, and it'll be released to the public. So it's not until August 10th that officially you will know where we're going. However, I believe we'll be able to be in touch with you prior to then or around that time so that we can start preparations and help you with those preparations as well. The one thing to know about us going forward, this plan will be a living document. Even though it's due August 10th, it will change. It will change probably through the rest of August, into September, and throughout the school year. And changes that will be made, because we've not done this before, it'll be based on, number one, our actions and collecting data on our actions, both academic, social, emotional, safety, and so forth, as well as COVID data, medical data, attendance data, and so forth. So we will, we need to think of this in being on a spectrum. As you look to the left, we talk about face-to-face instruction. This is where we have 100% of the kids in school, in person. Where you see where it says a web-enhanced blended, we believe that, well, I shouldn't say we believe. You as parents have the option to have your children be taught remotely. That means that they would have, their learning would be at home, similar to what was happening last spring. However, we call that remote learning 1.0. We did that on the fly, and the ability of our staff to be able to do that was absolutely tremendous. But as we go forward, knowing that students will be in that option, we will have a better, more informed, more robust programming going forward. So we could have students who are in person, while some students are remote learning, or to the far right, where everybody is online, everybody is remote learning. And again, this could be different. We could be in a hybrid in October and remote learning online, and then everybody's face-to-face come June based on the medical data that is coming. A hybrid model is where we would have students working from home and students working in person, but that would be on a scheduled basis. That would be, for example, if half a class were in for 2 days and the other half were home remote learning, and then we would flip-flop that Thursday, Friday, or it could be 1 week on, 1 week off. Our goal, working with our building administration, as well as working through our central office, we're looking to be able to provide the scheduling and the predictability for you as parents, regardless of what model we're in. So for example, our remote learning would be more structured, students engaged at certain time periods, similarly as they would be if they were in school. What we're talking about, and you hear this phrase used a lot, it's the new normal. And again, school as we know it will be different, at least for this year. We've had a preview of the new normal. These pictures were taken in our extended school year programming held at the Taft Early Learning Center. You see staff and students with masks. You see them socially distanced. And so the work being done by our ESY staff and protocols and procedures put in place has really been beneficial for us to be able to see these protocols in action, and we appreciate our staff there. Our new normal includes our rituals, things that we've come to appreciate and count on every year. Class of 2020, it was a difficult year to be a senior in terms of what they look forward to in the spring. And our staff, our parents are really rallying around, and our school administration, I cannot say it enough in terms of the amount of planning and time that goes into even things as time honored as graduation has just been tremendous. Our senior parade was a beautiful day, and we have graduation this Saturday, and greatly looking forward to that. If you'll be attending, you know that It will be like a graduation that you've never been to. But it's our opportunity to honor our students as they need to be and as they should be. Our new normal regarding our academics and our social emotional learning, we need to be cognizant that come September, our children will have been out of school for 6 months. And so we need to target our planning, target our instruction and our assessment, and be more deliberate about making connections with our students and our families and with our staff. Essentially what we're doing is we're rebuilding school communities, we're rebuilding school cultures, setting norms, and being able to have those norms and those relationships be able to move seamlessly up and down that continuum. Being able to have those models change so that there's is minimal disruption to the social, emotional services that we're providing for our children, as well as the academics. Last year, March 13th, we had those communities pulled apart. And as hard as we worked to keep them together and stay connected, and I believe we did a beautiful job, everyone in the community, it was still traumatic. And so we're, for our planning and our purposes, we have that in the foremost part of our brain. Nothing is done in isolation. We are working and collaborating together, balancing the guidance from our DESE, which is ongoing, from our families, and gaining feedback from them as well. We have, as we're working with our staff, working with our parents, again, keeping in mind devising safe learning environments for our students. At the school level, we have, at each school, we are connected vertically. Our steering team, our administrative steering team is working to decipher all of that guidance that continuously comes to us from above, and deliberating and devising plans. Again, we have to develop essentially 3 plans within a plan at each school level. And working with our staff has been tremendous. And developing plans, I know this past week, each one of our principals met with their parent working group, be able to take elements of existing or potential plans in getting feedback from our parents. So there's been that circular loop that's desperately needed in all planning processes. Big question is, how come we're not done? And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for everyone as we're trying to puzzle this out. We have guidance that comes down, and all of this is on not only the DESE website, which is listed here, it's on our website where you can connect. In the last month, since June 25th, where we received our initial guidance for the fall, we have had new guidance that has come out every week, including today. It's actually not out yet, guidance on transportation and facilities. And as people talk, you have to realize, as frustrating as it is to have that guidance come down week by week, there is nothing done in isolation. At the state level, there is our commissioner working with the Command Center, the Medical Advisory Board, working with the Massachusetts Academy of Pediatrics, working with the Department of Health, working with the Governor's Office. They've had a working group of 45 people from constituents, from the superintendents, parents, students, administrators, so forth, and local leaders. Also, too, in collaboration with our largest bargaining unions in the Commonwealth, as well as other public health experts. We administratively, within the past month, have been working on all of this guidance, as I've mentioned, and being able to decipher it has been has just been absolutely amazing in terms of being able to distill all of that as quickly as we have, not only as a district, but as a Commonwealth. Our districts in the Blackstone Valley are in constant communication with each other, as well as all of our principals are connected with their associations, our school nurses, Board of Healths. Everybody's working together, large groups, small groups, to do what's right for our kids. Eventually, we have to come in for a landing, and we are taking all of that feedback, all of this guidance based on research, and really distilling it down. So by next Friday, we have our basic plans in place for submission to the Commissioner of Education. Teaching and learning, this is what we do for a living. Our focus, number one, looking at where our students are coming through the door, where they are not only academically, but where they are socially, where they are emotionally, and also to working with our staff to see where they are as we emerge from our isolation one way or another to reconnect for the fall. We're focused on scope and sequences in terms of learning that was missed and where learning needs to be picked up in the following grade level. We're looking at time on learning and looking at our priority standards so we know where to target our instruction. Scheduling for our social emotional learning, as well as our high needs population, is really, there's a lot to these plans because as I mentioned previously, the manner in which we had done education has changed. And as you probably know, in terms of public education, things don't always turn as quickly as they may in other venues. I could not be more proud of our staff and our students and our families in terms of how we've been able to embrace these challenges together. In terms of focusing on our social emotional health needs, I had mentioned that previously regarding relationships and transitions, but also to looking for increased potential for trauma and the implications of the physical and psychological safety of our students. Working with parents on home monitoring of student health and guidelines for keeping students at home, and how we're still able to meet the needs of our whole child. We know that children come to school for a variety of different reasons. Number one, it's compulsory, but number two, what really grabs them and really connects them to our schools is oftentimes our activities, our sports and programming that happen after school. So we're awaiting guidelines on that as well. And that's a continuous phrase for us that we're awaiting guidelines. But we know that that's as important, and we have that in our minds. In terms of our logistics, it's absolutely amazing. As you take apart, excuse me, the most basic things that you could think about that we've been doing for years in terms of visitors to the building. If you have a child in our district, you've been approaching the school in a certain way. Yes, you've been buzzed in and so forth. People have spent hours identifying the manner in which visitors will come to our building. Being able to arrival dismissal, talking about our safety protocols, our emergency procedures, all have to be revised. In terms of, folks have asked regarding funding, and you hear a lot of information about grants and so forth. Here's just a few, shouldn't say a few. Here are the grants that we're working with, either at the state or the federal level. And you can read these for yourself, and we'll have these online. Very proud of our staff. Applied for, as a competitive grant, was the FY21 Summer and Vacation Program Learning Grant. We were just on Monday alerted that we will have $12,000 for a program we've designed for staff to work with our high-risk students, 1st through 8th grade, in a 2-week program prior to school starting. And they have the dates of that, and they'll have that up and running, and quite proud, grateful of our staff to put that together. Our second to last slide, in terms of communication. Our communication has been through the building level as folks really have been connecting with where their children will be going to school. Our principals, our other administrators, our building admin have done a tremendous job there. Part of the information and ongoing information going forward will be through survey. Tomorrow, there'll be a survey going out to all of you electronically, and we will follow it up in paper regarding your intentions about returning in the fall, regarding transportation, as well as communication methods. We ask that you do return that, and you'll be able to read that in the survey, as we'll be making decisions based on, at this moment in time, where parents find themselves, regarding school next fall. Through the principal's office and central office, we'll be providing you updates as we have them. And the biggest thing is, if you have a question or a concern, feel free to contact us. When I get emails, when our principals get emails, we turn them around, or phone calls. We would rather have you ask us than have you assume something. Anything we can do to help you, please reach out to us. Our last slide, I did not think it was going to come from Carla from Cheers, but really looking at the resiliency of children. And as educators and as parents, we know this. I think as adults, we struggle more along the lines of change and routines. As we know, our children are digital natives, and some of us who are a certain age, in terms of being able to engage in new technology, something that they do quite naturally. The quote from Rhea Perlman, "Children are resilient and strong with powerful spirits." I know that to be true of the children here in Uxbridge, and I take great solace in that, knowing that as we're working together with you to provide an education for them, that they'll be up for the challenge and they will embrace it. I am going to close down the PowerPoint right this second. And what I'm going to do is we are going to take some questions. And again, we may not be able to answer all of these questions, but we'll do our best for the next 20, 25 minutes or so. So Ms. Belleville, I believe you're facilitating all this good stuff.
So Dr. Tiana, one of the questions is around pre-K and pre-K classrooms and what they look like. If you want me to answer that, I'm happy to answer that. That we're still developing that at this time, and I know that there's also quite a few questions around logistics that, just as far as that, we'll be messaging those out as principals.
That's right, Ms. Belleville. We, as we're working through logistics based on the guidelines as we have them now, and again, our administrators working with our staff, and they're bouncing those ideas and sharing some of that in a little bit more detail with our parent working groups. We'll be able to share more with you, once we have those in place.
One of the other questions is will there be adjustments to planning based on the state's latest guidance and beginning to relax certain guidelines regarding the 180 days, as well as teacher training and adequate time on learning?
There, the commissioner is addressing that, and the commissioner will be, he said by tomorrow evening, will be providing us with some more guidance there. He does understand, and as we all do, the need for additional training, and we know that some flexibility may be needed in terms of providing an education for our kids. And again, as we have that information, he typically puts that out publicly, which you'll find on the DESE website.
There's also questions regarding what PPEs will be provided to staff as well as to students.
There are specific guidelines regarding PPE. For students, the guidance right now is all students grades 2 and above are required to wear masks. All staff are required to wear masks, and parents are providing masks for their own children. You know, that being said, we have and they've had guidelines for us in terms of purchasing face shields, in protective gowns and so forth for members of our staff, for example, our nursing staff, as well as having additional masks for students, as we know, things break, get lost, and so forth.
One of the other questions is around our after school program and our before school program, and what our plans are for that, as parents will need to know that in planning for what model that they so choose.
We are anticipating guidance on that coming next week. We want to be able to provide all of our services that we can for our students, and to the best of our ability, we'll do that.
There's a question regarding if we're remote, about students being able to have access to textbooks and workbooks and computers.
Say that last one again, Ms. Belleville.
If we go remote, will students have access to textbooks, workbooks, computers?
In terms of computers, thanks to Mr. Missler's efforts and Mr. Hyde's efforts in terms of financing, and Ms. Phillips in terms of grants, and all across the board, our students will be one-to-one next year, either with Chromebooks or iPads. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Missler, that you already have those keyed up and ready to rock and roll. Is that true?
Yes, we have them already set up with their names and bags attached and ready to roll out.
And as well as classroom and instructional materials, children will have access to that. I just don't have the specifics on that.
Will all children in the same family be on the same schedule if we are hybrid?
That is our goal. And we've spoken a lot about that at our administratively, and that's our goal.
There are a few questions around if a parent starts in one model with their children, will they be able to switch to a different model at any point?
The answer to that, I believe, is yes. We have not finalized our planning, but obviously flexibility in terms of decisions that you're making now in July and August, we would say yes.
There's a lot of questions around classroom setup and sanitization and protocols around for safety.
We do have guidance from DESE in terms of, in the facilities guidance is coming out this evening, in terms of looking at sanitization, cleaning, ventilation, and so forth. We have had development of protocols for our ESY, and those protocols were vetted through our Board of Health and Department of Public Health as well. And we'll be following those protocols to ensure everybody's safety.
There are many questions around mask breaks, and will children be allowed to have mask breaks?
We talk about that all the time. And again, when you start talking about things in education that are new and trying to work things into your schedule, we're talking about mask breaks. Whatever that looks like in terms of time, need, and so forth, that's fully yet to be determined. But yes.
There are a few questions around sick protocols. As we all know, students get ill or staff get ill, and what is the district's plan to put in sick protocols?
If you go to the DESE website, the protocols for scenarios regarding COVID positive cases have come out. Prior to that, working with the Board of Health for our ESY programming and for developing protocols for the fall, those are still being done for the fall, but folks can check those out directly. Those will be part of our plan that we have to submit.
There are a few questions around lunches and what, because students obviously will not be wearing masks during lunches. And will they be spaced apart accordingly?
Recommended guidance as for students and for folks to be socially distanced 6 feet. So to take off your mask, be able to eat, according to our guidance, students need to be at least 6 feet apart. And our administrators, our teachers, we've been mapping out our cafeterias, our classrooms, and we will follow the protocols and the guidance as prescribed to us.
There's a question about students transitioning to new buildings, and will additional orientations be provided for those, to say, moving to Whiten or to the high school, or those entering Taft for the first time?
I'll let Mr. Rubin, Mr. Marco, or yourself, Ms. Bivell, jump in on that.
So I can jump in first, and just to say that yes, that is the plan. We're working hard for some orientations for our preschool as well as for our kindergarten, but for all students, we're looking at if procedures are changing and we're having new expectations, we're having a lot of conversations around how we will message that out to parents and provide you that information well before the start of the school year.
Mr. Rubin or Mr. Marco?
Same for Whiten. You know, we're certainly looking at what ways we can provide a transition for those third graders that are coming up to fourth grade, whether it would be in person or videos that we may create. So we're certainly working on that and acknowledge that that is a concern, and we certainly want to be able to prepare those students for when they do come back to school in a new building.
Thank you.
The same for the high school. Whether we have a day when we have the 8th graders up all at once like we typically do, or embedded into those first couple of days of school and do some things that are virtual over the summer. Both of those options are on the table. We generally send out that information in early August. So we're going to land on our final plans for the Commonwealth first, and then adjust our orientation accordingly.
Dr. Tiano, at this time, a lot of the other questions are very, very specific around our plans, in the sense of many things that we do not have answers for at this time. And I know that what we plan to do with the remainder of the questions is to create a frequently asked question document, and that your plan is to send that out to families as we answer things like specials and recess and lunches and things like that. So we'll go through these at the end.
Okay. As I mentioned at the outset, folks, you may walk away with more questions than answers. Please note that we're working to address everything from how we enter the building to how we teach calculus, to everything that has to do with school. So Ms. Belleville, is essentially that it? 4 questions?
That is, there's one last question about cohorts that you might want to address.
Sure. Our administrators are working on, part of the guidance is developing cohorts for children. So you can reduce the amount of interaction that staff and students have with, just limit the amount of people that they interact with during the school day and during school week and school year. So we are actively working on that throughout the 3 buildings.
So the rest of the questions, Dr. Tiano, I believe that you'll need to lump together and create a frequently asked question document as they do get into more specifics that we don't necessarily have answers to at this time. And we'll send that out to families.
Thank you so much, Ms. Belleville. Folks, I greatly appreciate you spending your time with us here this evening. Please know that we will be working with you. We'll be working together to put the best plans in place to make sure that your children, our staff, and our families are safe. We do have guidance. We do have research and so forth. And also what we have is we have common sense. And we'll work together to make sure that we put the best plans in place. We will be sending out, as Ms. Belleville, follow-up regarding questions that you have, and the level of specificity that they have will depend on when we have our plans out. Also, too, survey will go out tomorrow. We would greatly appreciate you turning that survey around for each child as quickly as you can. Again, thank you for spending your time with us here tonight. I wish you all a very good evening, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.